Gun smoke tore across the mountainside like the breath of something ancient and violent. A.U.S. Ranger squad pushed through the rocky pass, their boots crunching on loose shale, when cold bullets began slamming into the ground inches from their feet. The sound was distinctive, the crack of high-velocity rounds breaking the sound barrier, followed by the distant thunder of the rifles that fired them. Sniper. High position. Sergeant Marcus Chen's voice cut through the chaos, sharp with controlled panic, but no one could spot the shooter. They scanned the ridgelines with trained eyes, searching for muzzle flash, for movement, for the telltale glint of scope glass. Nothing, only rock and shadow and the thin mountain air that made everything shimmer like a mirage. 7 invisible rifle barrels had locked them down like a web spun by something that knew exactly how to kill. Each ranger could feel it, that crawling sensation between the shoulder blades, the animal knowledge that crosshairs were painting red dots on their backs. The team was seconds away from being systematically eliminated. Captain Weiler knew it. His men knew it. This was how ranger squads died in these mountains, pinned, helpless, picked off one by ghosts they never saw. Then a voice crackled through the radio. Cold, low, female, utterly calm. Hold position. I see them. The rangers froze. Who the hell was that? Elena Hart, the comms specialist, the quiet woman they'd brought along to handle radios and translate local dialects. The one they'd assumed couldn't fight, had never fought, probably couldn't even hit a target at 50 meters. But in the next 47 seconds, all 7 enemy snipers dropped, one by one, precise, methodical, inevitable. And when the shooting stopped, when the mountain fell silent except for the wind whistling through the rocks, the Rangers of Bravo 1-2 stood in stunned disbelief. She's a sniper? Not just a sniper, a ghost. The morning briefing at Forward Operating Base Serpent had started like any other. The operations tent was a study in controlled chaos, tactical maps glowing on screens, satellite imagery updating in real time, the smell of strong coffee mixing with gun oil and desert dust. 12 Rangers from Bravo 1-2 gathered in the pre-dawn darkness, their faces illuminated by the pale blue light of the displays. Captain David Weiler stood at the front of the tent, a man carved from old leather and hard decisions. 42 years old, with a scar running from his left eyebrow to his temple, a souvenir from Fallujah that he never talked about. His eyes were the color of steel, and they'd seen things that made younger men wake up screaming. Korvac Ridge, he said, tapping the topographic display with 2 calloused fingers. The map showed a brutal landscape of jagged peaks and narrow valleys, the kind of terrain that broke ankles and ended careers. Enemy communications hub. Dug into the side of the mountain like a tick. We go in, destroy it, get out. Intel says light resistance. 4 to 6 hostiles, minimal armament. The Rangers nodded. This was standard direct action, their bread and butter. Fast insertion, destroy the target, extract before the enemy could respond in force. Staff Sergeant Marcus Chen leaned against a support pole, arms crossed. At 31, he was the team's designated marksman, a role that required patience, precision, and the ability to put rounds on target at distances that made normal riflemen weep. He'd grown up in San Francisco, son of immigrants who'd wanted him to be a doctor. Instead, he became someone who saved lives by taking them. What's the exfil plan if things go sideways? 2. Black Hawks on standby. Northern Plateau, 15-minute response time once we call them in. Weiler zoomed in on the extraction point. Air cover available if we need it, but command wants this quiet. In and out like smoke. Corporal Jamie Reeves, the team's breacher and a man who loved explosives the way some men loved their wives, grinned. When does anything we do stay quiet? Scattered laughter. Dark humor was the pressure valve that kept Rangers sane. One addition to the roster, Weiler continued. He glanced toward the tent entrance, and something in his voice changed. Not softer, exactly, but careful. Hart, communications specialist. She knows the local dialect Pashto, and Dari both handles our encrypted channels, and coordinates air support if we need it. The tent flap opened. Elena Hart stepped inside, and every eye turned to her. 28 years old, 5'7", which was tall for a woman but average among the Rangers. Dark brown hair pulled back in a severe regulation bun that revealed a face all hard angles and sharp edges. No makeup, no jewelry, nothing that wasn't absolutely necessary. She wore standard combat fatigues, the same pixelated tan and brown as everyone else, with a radio pack strapped to her tactical vest. Her sidearm, a Sig Sauer M17, rode low on her right thigh. No rifle, no carbine. Just the pistol and the radio gear. But it was her eyes that made people pause. Gray. Not blue-gray or green-gray, but the pure gray of winter clouds before snow. Calm. Distant. Like she was looking at something far beyond the tent walls. She didn't smile. Didn't introduce herself with the usual nervous energy of someone joining a new team. Just gave a single nod, precise, economical, and moved to stand at the back of the tent. Sergeant Chen leaned over to Corporal Derek Lawson, the team's point man. "She looks like she's never fired a shot in her life," he murmured, voice barely above a whisper. Lawson, a rangy Texan with a slow drawl and fast reflexes, studied her for a moment. "Radio girl. Bet she stays in the rear with the gear while we do the real work." Elena heard them. She had the kind of hearing that came from years of listening to radio chatter through static and chaos, but she said nothing. Her face didn't change. She simply set down a small duffel bag beside her feet. Lockable, military issue, the kind used for sensitive equipment, and waited. Weiler ran through the mission timeline with the smooth efficiency of a man who'd briefed 1,000 operations. Insertion at 0400 hours. 2 Black Hawks drop us on the southern approach, 15-kilometer hike through mountainous terrain. We hit the target at dawn when their guards are tired and sloppy. Plant charges, destroy the hub, exfil via helicopter from the northern plateau. Questions? Silence. These were professionals. They knew their jobs. Good. Wheels up in 2 hours. Get your gear, check your weapons, and get whatever sleep you can. Dismissed. The Rangers filed out, talking in low voices about loadouts and ammunition counts. Elena remained behind, her eyes fixed on the topographic map still glowing on the main screen. Weiler noticed. "You good, Hart?" She looked up, and for just a moment, he saw something flicker in those gray eyes. Something that might have been recognition or memory or calculation. Then it was gone. "Yes, sir." "You've done field ops before?" He kept his voice neutral, but he was studying her the way he'd study terrain before an assault. "Some." He waited for more. She offered nothing. Just that single word, flat and final. "This isn't like working from a base camp," Weiler said, trying a different angle. "The terrain is hostile. The enemy is experienced. Things can go wrong fast." "I understand. Stick close to the team. Don't wander off. We'll keep you safe." Elena's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. If Weiler hadn't been watching closely, he would have missed it. "Understood, sir." She picked up her duffel bag, lifting it with an ease that suggested it was lighter than it looked, or she was stronger than she appeared, and left the tent. Weiler stared after her, frowning. Something about her bothered him, not in a bad way, necessarily. More like, she didn't fit. She moved too well for someone who was supposedly just a comm specialist. Her eyes had swept the map with the kind of tactical awareness that took years to develop. And that bag she carried, the way she handled it suggested it contained something important, something she didn't want anyone else to see. He made a mental note to keep an eye on her. The insertion went smooth. 2 Black Hawks, ungainly metal beasts that could take a beating and keep flying, dropped them on the southern approach to Korvac Ridge under a moonless sky. The darkness was absolute, the kind of black that city people never experienced. The Rangers wore night vision goggles that turned the world into shades of green and white. The terrain was brutal. Jagged rocks thrust up from the ground like broken teeth. Loose scree covered the slopes, ready to slide and send a climber tumbling. Narrow passes barely wide enough for single file twisted between cliffs that rose hundreds of feet on either side. The air was thin and cold, biting through their layers and making every breath feel insufficient. Elena Hart moved in the middle of the column, her position carefully assigned by Weiler, protected, watched. Her radio gear hummed softly, a white noise generator that masked their communications from enemy signal intelligence. She monitored 3 frequencies simultaneously. Base command back at Serpent, the air support birds circling 30 miles away, and the team's internal tactical net. Her breathing was steady, controlled, rhythmic. Her footfalls made no sound despite the rough ground. She moved like someone who'd done this before, many times, in many different mountains. Corporal Derek Lawson, walking point 20 meters ahead, glanced back at her through his night vision. She wasn't struggling, wasn't breathing hard, wasn't making the rookie mistakes that got people killed, like stepping on loose rocks or silhouetting herself against the sky. He keyed his mic. "Hart's keeping up better than I expected. Maybe she's tougher than she looks," Lawson replied, his Texas drawl flattened by the radio. "Or maybe she's too scared to complain," Chen added. Elena keyed her mic once, a double click. Acknowledgement without words. She'd heard them, and she didn't care. They hiked for 3 hours, covering 8 kilometers. The pace was punishing, fast enough to make good time, but slow enough to stay quiet and maintain security. Every 20 minutes, Weiler called a halt, and they went into a defensive perimeter while the point man scouted ahead. At 0630, with dawn beginning to gray the eastern sky, Weiler raised his fist. The column halted immediately, each ranger dropping into a crouch and scanning his sector. 5 minutes, Weiler said quietly over the radio. "Hydrate. Check gear. Stay alert." The rangers dropped their packs with quiet efficiency. They pulled out water bottles, hydration was life in the mountains, and adjusted straps and buckles that had shifted during the hike. Quiet conversations in whispers. The click of magazines being checked and reseated. Elena set her radio pack down carefully, opened the small duffel beside it, and checked something inside. Her movements were precise, almost ritualistic. She didn't pull the item out, just verified it was there, then closed and locked the bag again. Corporal Reeves, who had a breacher's natural curiosity about anything locked or hidden, sidled over. "What's in the bag, Hart?" She looked up. Those gray eyes were unreadable in the pre-dawn light. "Backup equipment." "What kind of backup equipment?" "The kind I hope we don't need." That's not really an answer. Elena's expression didn't change. "No, it's not." She closed the bag before he could look inside and stood, shouldering her gear. Conversation over. Reeves frowned but let it go. Something about the way she moved, the economy of her gestures, suggested that pushing would get him nowhere. 5 minutes later, they were moving again. At 0715, the team entered a narrow defile between 2 ridges. The walls rose 60 feet on either side, weathered stone streaked with rust-colored minerals that looked like old blood in the growing light. The pass was 200 meters long, winding slightly to the left before opening into a wider valley. It was a textbook kill zone. Elena felt it before she saw it. A crawling sensation between her shoulder blades, like invisible fingers tracing her spine. Her eyes swept the ridgelines in a pattern that was both systematic and instinctive. Nothing moved. No birds, no insects. The mountain was holding its breath. She keyed her mic. "Captain, recommend we hold position." The column stopped. Weiler moved back to her position, his expression questioning. "Why?" "This is a kill zone." Her voice was flat, certain. "Based on what?" Elena pointed up without moving her rifle. "Brass casings on the ledge, 10 o'clock high. Old, but recent enough to still have sun reflection. Rock pile at 2 o'clock, unnatural stacking pattern, probably a hide position. Metal glint at 12:30. Could be a barrel or scope ring." Weiler looked where she indicated. He had good eyes, trained eyes, eyes that had spotted enemy positions in a dozen countries. He saw nothing. "Hart, I don't see any of that." "It's there." Chen had moved up to listen. "How the hell would you know what a sniper hide looks like?" Elena's jaw tightened. "Because I used to build them." Silence. The team was listening now, even those forward in the column. "What are you saying?" Weiler asked, carefully. "I'm saying someone's watching us, multiple someones, and if we walk into that pass, we're dead." Lawson's voice crackled over the radio. "Sir, we can't stop for every shadow," Intel said, light resistance. "We're burning daylight." Weiler hesitated. Command wanted this mission done quickly. The window of opportunity was narrow, but Hart's certainty was unsettling. She didn't seem like someone who panicked or imagined threats. "All right," he said finally. "We move through, but weapons hot. First sign of contact, we scatter and find cover. Hart, you stay in the middle where we can protect you." Elena's grip tightened on her rifle sling. Every instinct, she had instincts developed over years of hunting and being hunted, was screaming at her. But she wasn't in command. She was just the radio operator. "Copy," she said quietly. They advanced into the defile. 30 meters in, Elena's vision narrowed. Time seemed to slow. She saw everything with crystalline clarity. The way the morning light caught on that distant brass casing, the shadows that didn't quite match the rock formations, the absolute stillness that meant predators were waiting. She opened her mouth to call another halt. The first shot cracked like lightning. The sound was enormous in the confined space, echoing and re-echoing until it seemed like a dozen rifles had fired. Corporal Derek Lawson, walking point, dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Blood sprayed from his left shoulder, painting the rocks in an arc of scarlet. He hit the ground hard, his rifle clattering away, and started screaming high and thin and terrified. "Sniper, down! Down!" The Rangers scattered like startled birds. Training took over. They dove behind rocks, into shallow depressions, behind anything that might stop a bullet. Another shot rang out, then another. Stone chips exploded near Chen's head, drawing blood from a dozen tiny cuts. "Where is he?" "I don't know. I can't see him." "Anyone got eyes on the shooter?" "Negative. Negative." Weiler pressed himself against the ridge wall, his heart hammering. He scanned the heights with desperate intensity. Nothing. The sniper or snipers were invisible. Elena was already moving. While the others hugged cover, she low-crawled to Lawson's position, dragging him by his tactical vest into the shelter of a large boulder. He was in shock, hyperventilating, his blood soaking into the dry earth. "You're okay," she said, her voice cutting through his panic with absolute certainty. "Breathe. Slow. In through your nose." She applied pressure to his wound with one hand, firm, professional, exactly the right amount, while with her other hand, she pulled out a compact range-finding scope from her duffel bag. The scope was specialized equipment, the kind issued to forward observers and long-range reconnaissance teams. She pressed it to her eye and began scanning the ridgeline with methodical precision. 5 seconds. 10. Then, quietly, not 1, 7. Weiler had crawled over, his face pale under his tan. "What?" "7 shooters. Overlapping fields of fire. We're in a sniper ring." "How can you possibly know that?" Elena handed him the scope without taking her eyes off the ridges. "Look at the high points. 12 o'clock, 1:30, 2:15, 4 o'clock, 7, 9:30, 10:15. Each position covers a sector. No dead angles. Classic kill zone construction. Whoever set this up knows what they're doing." Weiler looked through the scope, adjusting the focus. He saw rocks, shadows, maybe something that could be a position, or might just be a trick of the light. But another shot confirmed it. Then another. Different angles, different acoustic signatures. They were surrounded. Reeves tried to reach a better position. A bullet smashed into the rock beside his head, sending shrapnel into his right cheek and ear. He dropped back with a curse, blood streaming down his neck. "We're pinned." Lawson groaned through gritted teeth. "I can't move my arm. I can't feel my fingers." Chen fired blindly up at the ridges, 3 round bursts that accomplished nothing. Where the hell are they? No return fire, no muzzle flashes. The enemy was using suppressed weapons or shooting from deep cover positions that swallowed the flash and smoke. The Rangers couldn't even return effective fire. Weiler's radio crackled. "Bravo 1-2, this is Serpent Base, sitrep." He pressed the transmit button, his voice controlled despite the chaos. "Contact. Multiple enemy snipers, positions unknown. 2 casualties, non-life-threatening. Request immediate air support and extraction. Negative on immediate. Bravo 1-2. All air assets committed to ongoing operations. Earliest response time is 90 minutes. 90 minutes. They'd all be dead in 10. Elena set down the range-finding scope. She opened her duffel bag fully for the first time. Inside, a compact LRT-7 long-range optical sight, military grade, the kind that cost $6,000 and was issued only to designated snipers. Beside it, a laminated ballistics card covered in handwritten calculations, a laser rangefinder, and a worn leather logbook filled with wind charts, atmospheric tables, and drop calculations in precise, tiny handwriting. Weiler stared. "What the hell is that?" "What I hope we wouldn't need." Elena's voice was different now, colder, flatter. The voice of someone who'd made hard decisions before. "Are you?" "Yes." One word, final as a door closing. "I can take them. All 7. But I need a rifle with reach." Chen was closest. He'd been hit in the left thigh, not serious. The bullet had passed through muscle without hitting bone, but bleeding steadily. His SR-25 designated marksman rifle lay beside him, a precision weapon chambered in 7.62 mm NATO with an effective range of 800 meters. "You're insane," he said, his face twisted with pain and disbelief. "You're a radio operator. You probably can't hit the broadside of a—" Another shot interrupted him. This one grazed Reeves's pack, missing his spine by inches. They heard the bullet punch through fabric and gear. Weiler made the call. "Chen, give her the weapon." "Captain, she's not qualified." "That's an order, Sergeant." Chen hesitated, then shoved the rifle toward her. "You miss, we're all dead." Elena picked up the SR-25. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, checking the chamber, verifying the magazine was seated, testing the bolt action. She adjusted the scope's parallax, checked the zero, and felt the balance of the weapon. "I don't miss," she said quietly. The world narrowed to a tunnel. Everything outside that tunnel, the shouting, the fear, the blood, faded to white noise. Elena's breathing slowed. Her heart rate dropped from 90 beats per minute to 50, 45, 40. Her hands stopped trembling. Her vision sharpened until she could see the individual crystals in the rock face across the valley. She wasn't Elena Hart anymore. Wasn't the communications specialist who handled radios and stayed safe in the rear. She was Operator 12, the ghost of Basra. The woman who once held an unofficial record, 11 confirmed kills in a single engagement, all within 2 minutes, during an ambush on a convoy she was supposed to be protecting. She settled into a prone position behind a low rock, her body forming the perfect shooter's platform, left elbow under the rifle, supporting the weight, right hand on the grip, finger resting outside the trigger guard, cheek welded to the stock, eye aligned with the scope. She pressed her eye to the scope, and the mountain leaped into focus. The first target appeared, a shape behind rocks at 12 o'clock, 600 meters out, partially concealed, but she could see the barrel, the shadow of a head, the micro-movements of breathing that no amount of training could eliminate. She calculated with the cold precision of a machine, wind left to right at 4 knots, based on the way dust was moving in the valley. Elevation difference, 212 feet, which meant shooting uphill, which meant the bullet would impact high. Temperature 38 degrees Fahrenheit. Humidity low, maybe 20%, which would reduce air resistance marginally. Barometric pressure high, they were at altitude. All of it factored in fractions of a second. Her finger found the trigger. 2 pounds of pressure. She could feel the break point, that tiny moment before the sear released. 1 breath in through her nose, half breath out through slightly parted lips. Pause at the bottom of the respiratory cycle, when the body was most still. Fire. The rifle barked. The recoil was familiar, comfortable, like shaking hands with an old friend. Through the scope, Elena saw the first sniper jerk backward, his weapon clattering down the rocks in a miniature avalanche. 4 seconds elapsed. She worked the bolt smooth, fast, the action so practiced it was automatic. The spent casing ejected in a golden arc. A new round chambered with a metallic click. Target 2, 130 position, 730 meters, higher elevation, partial cover behind a boulder. She adjusted for the increased angle, for the slight shift in wind direction. The crosshairs settled on a shadow that might have been nothing, or might have been death waiting. Fire. The second sniper dropped. She saw the impact, saw him fall away from his position. 8 seconds. The Rangers had stopped shooting, stopped moving. They stared at her with the kind of expression people reserve for miracles or catastrophes. Target 3, 215, 550 meters, prone on a flat rock outcropping. Harder shot, smaller profile, better cover. Elena compensated for the downward angle, for the thermal rising from the sun-warmed stone that would push the bullet slightly right. Fire. Target 3 collapsed. His rifle slid from nerveless fingers. 12 seconds. "Jesus Christ," Reeves whispered. Blood ran down his face unnoticed. Target 4, 4 o'clock, 820 meters, behind a ridge. She couldn't see him directly, but she could see the heat shimmer from his suppressor, the faint distortion in the air like looking through bad glass. She aimed 6 inches left of where the shimmer ended, calculating where the shooter's body had to be based on the physics of heat dispersion and rifle positioning. Fire. A body tumbled into view, rolling down the slope before catching on an outcrop. 18 seconds. Target 5, 7 o'clock, 620 meters, moving between cover positions. Smart. Trying to relocate after seeing his companions fall. Elena tracked him, her scope moving smoothly. She led him by 3 feet, accounting for his speed and direction. Fire. He stopped moving. Stopped forever. 24 seconds. Target 6, 930, 410 meters, lying in a narrow crevice. Only his rifle barrel was visible, a slim line of metal in shadow. Elena aimed at the base of the barrel, where human anatomy dictated the body had to be. Concrete and steel didn't bleed, but people did. Fire. The barrel tilted, then fell. She saw movement, an arm going slack. 31 seconds. 1 left. Target 7, 10-15 position, 900 meters. The farthest, the hardest. The shooter was smart. He'd repositioned twice since the engagement started, each time moving to better cover. But Elena was smarter. She watched the air itself, the way dust moved in invisible currents, the heat shimmer rising from the rocks, the micro variations in atmospheric pressure that she could read like others read books. She calculated a 3-dimensional trajectory in her head, accounting for Coriolis effect from the Earth's rotation, for spin drift from the rifle's twist rate, for every variable that separated good shooters from legends. She exhaled completely, let every molecule of air leave her lungs, held in that perfect moment of stillness. Fire. The shot seemed to hang in the air forever. Elena tracked it through the scope, watching the bullet flight, seeing or imagining she saw the tiny disruption in the air as supersonic metal tore through atmosphere. Then, through the scope, she saw the distant figure slump, saw him fall away from his rifle, saw the weapon clatter against stone. 47 seconds. 7 targets. 7 kills. Perfect violence. Elena lowered the rifle. Her hands were steady. Her face was blank, emotionless. The mask of someone who'd done this so many times it had become routine. The Ranger stared at her like she'd just materialized from thin air. "Move," she said quietly, her voice barely louder than the wind. "They might have backup." Weiler snapped out of his shock. "You heard her! Lawson, can you walk?" "Yeah." Lawson's voice was tight with pain. "Yeah, I can walk." "Then let's move. Now, before someone comes to find out why their snipers stopped reporting." They gathered their wounded Lawson with his shoulder, Chen with his leg, Reeves with his face full of stone shrapnel. They grabbed their gear with shaking hands and pushed through the pass at double time, weapons up, eyes scanning for new threats. No more shots came. The sniper ring was broken, the invisible cage destroyed by 7 perfect trigger pulls. They cleared the defile and took up a defensive position in a boulder field 500 meters north. Good cover, good sightlines, defensible. Weiler established a perimeter, posted security, called in a casualty report to base. Then he turned to Elena. She was reloading Chen's rifle with mechanical efficiency, ejecting the magazine, checking the rounds, reinserting it with a decisive click. Her movements were automatic, burned into muscle memory by thousands of repetitions. "Who the hell are you?" She didn't look up. "Someone who used to do this." "That's not an answer. Hart." His voice was harder now. "That wasn't luck. That wasn't beginner's luck or divine intervention. That was professional level marksmanship. So, I'll ask again. Who are you?" Elena finished reloading, set the rifle down, finally met his eyes. "I was a sniper. Quick Reaction Force, 3rd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment. 4 years active, 98 confirmed kills across 3 deployments. Designated marksman instructor at Fort Benning for 18 months. I trained half the snipers currently deployed in this theater." The Rangers had gathered closer, listening. The silence was absolute. Chen stared at her, his face pale from blood loss. "Why the hell are you here as a radio operator?" Elena looked away, toward the ridge they'd just escaped. When she spoke, her voice was quieter. "Because the last mission I ran, I failed." "What happened?" Reeves asked. His medic had bandaged his face, but blood still seeped through. Elena was quiet for a long moment. Then, 3 years ago, village extraction in hostile territory, high-value target, coalition forces pinned down by enemy fire. My team was sent in for emergency extraction." She picked up a small stone, turned it over in her fingers. Didn't look at any of them. My brother, Captain Thomas Hart, was the team leader on the ground. He called for sniper support. I was on overwatch, 800 meters out, elevated position. I acquired 4 targets, took the shots, cleared them, thought I'd gotten them all. The stone turned in her fingers. Over and over. I missed one. He was hidden in a cellar, concealed under debris. I should have seen him, should have checked every angle, but I didn't. I cleared the building, told my brother it was safe. Her jaw clenched. He waited until my brother's team entered. Then he detonated a suicide vest. The wind blew across the rocks. Somewhere, a bird called. No one spoke. 7 dead, including my brother, because I didn't see the 8th man. Elena's voice was flat, emotionless, but her hands were white-knuckled around the stone. I turned in my rifle the next day, requested transfer to communications, told myself I'd never be responsible for another death, that I'd stay in the rear, away from triggers and scopes and decisions that got people killed. She finally looked at them. But it doesn't work that way, does it? You can't outrun what you are. The skills don't go away just because you want them to. And when your people are dying, she trailed off. Weiler exhaled slowly. Hart, that wasn't your fault. You couldn't have. I could have. She cut him off, her voice sharp. That's exactly the point. I could have seen him, should have seen him. That's what I was trained for. That's what I was supposed to be good at. And I failed. So you buried yourself in a comms role? Yes. Until today. Until today. Lawson spoke up, his voice rough. You saved our lives. I did my job. No, he said. You did more than that. You could have stayed hidden. Let us die. Kept your secret buried with us. I thought about it. Elena's honesty was brutal. For about half a second, I thought about staying quiet, letting someone else handle it. But? She looked at each of them. But I've seen enough people die. I'm done watching. Weiler stood, walked over to her, extended his hand. Then we're done treating you like cargo. Elena looked at his hand, then, slowly, she shook it. We still have a mission, she said. The communications hub. Can you fight? I just killed 7 men in less than a minute. What do you think? Weiler smiled, grim, but genuine. I think you're exactly the kind of terrifying I want on my team. Let's move out. They pushed deeper into enemy territory. The terrain grew worse, steeper slopes, narrower passes, loose rock that could trigger a fatal slide. The communications hub was supposed to be in a cave complex 2 kilometers ahead, dug into the side of Korvac Ridge itself like a parasite burrowing into flesh. At 1,400 hours, they reached the outer perimeter. Weiler called a halt at the edge of a ridgeline that overlooked the target. They went prone, using their optics to study the layout. Holy hell, Lawson breathed. The complex was far more fortified than intelligence had suggested. Concrete bunkers with firing slits, trenches zigzagging across the approach, coils of razor wire glinting in the afternoon sun, 3 guard towers at strategic points, heavy weapons positions they could see at least 2 machine guns. This isn't light resistance, Chen said, his voice tight. This is a damn fortress. Elena had Chen's rifle again. He'd insisted she keep it, saying she could use it better one-legged than he could with 2. She scanned the layout through the magnified scope, cataloging defensive positions with professional detachment. 40 to 50 hostiles visible, probably more inside the caves. 3 crew-served weapons, overlapping fields of fire. They're expecting an attack. How the hell did Intel miss this? Reeves demanded. Either the intel was old, or someone tipped them off. Weiler studied the complex with narrowed eyes. Either way, we're compromised. His radio crackled. Bravo 1-2, this is Serpent Base. Sit rep on primary objective. Base, be advised, target is heavily fortified. Request updated intelligence and air support for assault. Stand by, Bravo 1-2. They waited. Minutes crawled by. Elena watched the complex, her mind automatically planning fields of fire, noting dead spaces, identifying key targets. Bravo 1-2, Serpent Base. Air support available in 6 to 0 minutes. Recommend you hold position and wait for support before engaging. 60 minutes. An hour. Elena pointed. Look. They followed her gesture. Inside the complex, movement. Soldiers carrying equipment out of the caves. loading it into trucks, dismantling antennas. "They're evacuating," Weiler said. "If we wait for air support, they'll be gone." "Then we don't wait," Elena said. "We infiltrate." "How?" "That complex has more guns than a small army." Elena traced a route on her tactical tablet, her fingers moving with certainty. "Eastern approach. There's a blind spot from the towers. See that depression in the ground? Natural fold in the terrain. We move in low during the next guard rotation. Hit the generator first to kill their lights and comms. Then we breach the cave entrance while they're confused and disorganized." Weiler studied the route. "That's insane. You're talking about walking into a fortress." "I'm talking about walking around a fortress. Big difference." She zoomed in on the map. "Look, 3 blind spots in their coverage. They're positioned to defend against a direct assault, not a team willing to crawl through 200 meters of rough ground. And if they spot us, then we die. But we were probably going to die anyway, so what's the difference?" Chen laughed sharp, slightly hysterical. "I like her." Weiler studied the map for another 10 seconds. Then he nodded. "All right, we do it your way. But Hart, you're calling the tactical approach. You've got the experience. I'm not qualified to. You just killed 7 enemy snipers in less than a minute. You're qualified. Now tell me how we do this without getting massacred." Elena took a breath. Then she began issuing orders. They moved at dusk, when the light was failing and human eyes couldn't quite adjust. Elena led, her eyes picking out threats that the others would have missed. She stopped suddenly, raising her fist. The team froze. She pointed down. A tripwire, barely visible, stretched across their path. It was connected to a fragmentation grenade in a can filled with pebbles, a crude but effective early warning system. She carefully stepped over it, showing the others where to move. 20 meters farther, a pressure plate buried under loose dirt. She could see where the earth had been disturbed, the subtle difference in color and texture. She marked it with a small IR chemlight, visible only through night vision. 50 meters from the perimeter, motion sensors mounted on stakes driven into the ground. She guided the team around their detection cones, moving in the blind spots between overlapping fields. At the generator, shed a concrete structure barely larger than a closet. Elena placed breaching charges with surgical precision. She'd learned this from Reeves during the hike, watching how he worked, asking quiet questions. "On my mark," she whispered into her mic. 3, 2, 1. The explosion was small but effective. The charges punched through the concrete, and sparks erupted from inside. The lights throughout the complex went out. Emergency generators kicked in after 3 seconds, but that was 3 seconds of confusion. "Move," Weiler hissed. Bravo 1-2 rushed the cave entrance. Flashbangs tumbled through the opening, blinding, deafening, disorienting. Then the Rangers poured in, rifles up, moving with practiced violence. Close quarters combat, muzzle flashes lighting the darkness, the thunder of gunfire in confined spaces, smoke grenades creating fog, grenades exploding with percussion that rattled teeth. Elena fought alongside them, no longer the sniper from distance but a soldier in the thick of it. A hostile rounded a corner. She put 2 rounds in his chest before he could raise his weapon. Another appeared from a side tunnel. Reeves took him down. They pushed deeper, clearing rooms and tunnels with controlled aggression. The cave branched, left or right. Elena closed her eyes, listened through the chaos. She could hear it, the high-pitched whine of electronics, the hum of computer processors, the buzz of electrical equipment. Right. They went right. At the end of the tunnel, the communications hub, banks of computers, satellite uplinks, encrypted transmitters, a technical treasure trove, all humming with power and data. "Plant the charges," Weiler ordered. Chen and Lawson rigged the explosives with practice speed. 30 pounds of C4, enough to collapse the entire chamber. A grenade rolled in from the tunnel they just cleared. Grenade. Elena saw it, saw the pin was pulled, saw it bouncing toward them. She didn't think, didn't calculate, just moved. She kicked it back down the tunnel, perfect contact, like a soccer player passing to a teammate. It bounced once, twice, then detonated out of sight. The blast wave washed over them, but the tunnel walls absorbed most of the force. "Clear," she called. "Charges set," Chen shouted. 30 seconds. "Out! Everyone out!" They ran. The cave shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. Cracks appeared in the stone. Behind them, the hub exploded in a roar of fire and collapsing rock. The pressure wave threw them forward, sent them stumbling into the open air. They burst into the evening, gasping, covered in dust and smoke and blood. "Radio base," Weiler said between breaths. "Tell them target destroyed." Elena keyed her mic with shaking hands. "Serpent base, this is Bravo 1-2. Primary objective neutralized. Repeat, target destroyed. Requesting immediate exfil." "Copy. Bravo 1-2. Birds inbound, ETA 1 to 5 minutes. 15 minutes. They just had to survive 15 more minutes. Behind them, enemy soldiers were recovering from the confusion. Gunfire erupted. Bullets cracked through the air. "Move!" Weiler shouted. "Extraction point! Double time!" They ran toward the northern plateau where the helicopters would land. They reached the extraction point, a flat area of rock barely large enough for 2 Black Hawks to land. Defensive positions, security established. They could hear the helicopters now, the distant thump of rotors carrying across the mountain. Weiler's radio crackled. "Bravo 1-2, new intelligence from base. Go ahead. Those 7 snipers your specialist eliminated. They've been identified. They were part of a hunter-killer team designated Shadow Squadron. Their mission was specifically to track and eliminate Ranger units. Over the past 6 months, they've been responsible for 18 Ranger Kias and 43 wounded across 4 separate engagements." The team went quiet. "If they'd succeeded today," the voice from base continued, "you'd all be listed as Kia by now. Whatever specialist you have with you, make sure she gets commended. She saved 12 lives today. Base out." Weiler looked at Elena. She was checking Chen's leg wound, making sure the bandage was secure. "You hear that?" he asked. She didn't look up. "I heard." Chen spoke, his voice rough with pain and something else. "You saved our lives." "I did my job." "No," Lawson said, cradling his injured arm. "You did way more than that. You're not just good, you're a legend." Elena finally looked up. "Legends are dead people. I'm just trying to stay alive." "Well, you're keeping us alive too," Reeves added, touching his bandaged face. "That counts for something." The helicopter rotors were louder now, maybe 5 minutes out. Then Elena froze. "Get down!" she screamed. They dropped as a bullet cracked overhead. Sniper. But this wasn't like before. This wasn't multiple shooters in a ring. This was one man. And he was better than the others. Another shot. It hit Reeves' helmet, knocking him flat. The helmet saved his life, but he was dazed, bleeding from a scalp wound. "Where is he?" Chen yelled. "South Ridge," Lawson called back. Elena was already moving. She grabbed Chen's rifle, sprinted to the edge of the clearing, and took cover behind a fallen boulder. She scanned the ridge. Nothing. No movement. No glint. But she heard it. The faintest sound. A breath. A shift of fabric on stone. She knew that sound. "It's him," she whispered. "Who?" Weiler demanded over the radio. "The one who killed my brother. The shadow of Korvac. The ghost who'd haunted her nightmares for 3 years. He was here. And he was hunting her now." Elena had memorized everything about that day 3 years ago. The angle of the shot that killed her brother. The sound of the rifle, a distinctive crack, slightly lower pitched than standard. The timing between breaths, 4 seconds. Not the usual 5 or 6. The way the shooter repositioned between shots, always moving, never staying in one spot. This was the same pattern, the same shooter. The man who destroyed her life. Another shot. It hit the boulder 6 inches from her head, sending rock chips into her face. She didn't flinch. She closed her eyes. Listened. The shot had come from the left. But the acoustic was wrong. It echoed in a way that suggested the shooter was using the rock formations to mask his true position. She heard wind, felt it on her face. Southwest, gusting, variable. Bad conditions for long-range shooting. She heard birds. They'd gone silent on the eastern slope, meaning he wasn't there. She heard the helicopters, 90 seconds out now, close enough to see, rotors beating the air like war drums. She had one chance, one shot. Elena stepped out from cover, deliberately exposing herself. "Hart, what are you doing?" Weiler shouted. She raised the rifle, but didn't aim at the ridge. Instead, she aimed at a rock formation 200 meters south, a spot where the acoustics would create a false echo, where a reflection might suggest a shooter's position. She fired. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then, a single shot from the real position, 400 meters west, behind a boulder outcrop on a secondary ridge. The shadow had given himself away, reflexively returning fire at what he thought was her real location. But Elena was already pivoting. She'd anticipated it, planned for it, used his own training against him. She acquired the target through her scope. A figure in gray camouflage, older than she expected, maybe 50, with a lined face and cold eyes. The rifle was custom, hand-built, fitted with a suppressor and a scope that probably cost more than a car. Their eyes met across 400 meters. Even through the scope, she could see his expression change, recognition, understanding. He knew who she was. She knew who he was. 3 years of grief and guilt and rage crystallized into this single moment. They fired simultaneously. 2 bullets crossed in the air, passing each other in flight. 2 triggers pulled at almost the same instant. 2 shooters who knew exactly what they were doing. But Elena's bullet arrived first. 14 thousandths of a second. A gap so small it was almost meaningless. But in that tiny fraction of time, her bullet crossed the distance and found its target. The shadow of Korvac fell, tumbling backward from his position. His bullet hit the tree where Elena had been standing. But she'd moved 1 step left at the last instant, a micro-adjustment based on reading his breathing pattern, predicting when he'd fire. The clearing was silent except for the incoming helicopters. Elena lowered the rifle. Her hands were shaking now. Not from fear, not from adrenaline, from release, from a burden she'd carried for 3 years, finally lifting. "It's done," she said quietly. To herself, to her brother's ghost, to the universe. The Black Hawks landed in a storm of dust and noise. "Load up," Weiler shouted over the rotor wash. They carried the wounded aboard, Lawson with his shattered shoulder, Reeves with his concussion, Chen with his leg wound. Each one was helped into the helicopter by their brothers, no one left behind. Enemy forces were converging on their position. Gunfire erupted from the tree line, muzzle flashes winking in the gathering darkness. Elena stood at the helicopter door, rifle up, providing covering fire, controlled bursts, aimed shots. She wasn't spraying bullets, every round had a purpose. "Hart, get in!" Weiler yelled from inside the Black Hawk. Not yet. She dropped 2 more hostiles advancing on their position, her rifle barking with mechanical precision. The pilot's voice crackled over the radio. "We gotta go. Now. We're taking fire." Elena saw movement, a wounded ranger, Corporal Jake Sullivan, pinned behind a rock 50 meters away. He'd been separated during the chaos of the firefight, his legs shredded by grenade shrapnel. "Wait!" Elena jumped out of the helicopter before anyone could stop her. "Hart." She ran across the clearing. Bullets kicked up dirt around her feet, cracked past her head, thudded into the ground like raindrops made of lead. She didn't stop, didn't dodge, just ran straight and fast, her rifle still firing in controlled bursts to suppress the enemy. She reached Sullivan. He'd been hit in both legs, arterial bleeding in his right thigh. His face was white with shock. "I can't walk," he gasped. "Leave me. Get out." Not happening. She hauled him up in a fireman's carry, 180 pounds of muscle and gear and weapons. Started running back toward the helicopter. Her legs screamed. Her lungs burned. The weight was crushing. The helicopter was lifting off. "Don't you dare leave her," Weiler roared at the pilot. "We're taking too much fire, sir." "I don't care if we're taking artillery. You hold that bird." The Black Hawk hovered 3 feet off the ground, its rotors screaming, its hull pinging with incoming rounds. Elena ran harder, 20 meters, 15, 10. Her vision was narrowing, black spots at the edges, muscles turning to water. 5 meters. Hands reached out. Chen and Reeves grabbed Sullivan, hauled him aboard like he weighed nothing. Weiler grabbed Elena's tactical vest and yanked her in as the helicopter surged upward, engines roaring, gaining altitude fast. Bullets pinged off the hull. Tracers arced past. Then they were clear, roaring over the mountains, leaving Korvac Ridge behind in the darkness. Elena collapsed on the floor, gasping. Her body shook with exhaustion and adrenaline crash. She couldn't move, couldn't think. Sullivan, lying beside her with medics working on his legs, grabbed her hand. His grip was weak but determined. "Thank you. You saved my life." She couldn't speak, just nodded. squeezed his hand back. Weiler knelt beside her, his face appearing in her blurred vision. "You did good, Hart, real good." She managed to whisper, "Mission complete? Mission complete. Target destroyed. Everyone coming home." "Good." Her eyes closed. The adrenaline was gone, leaving only exhaustion so profound it felt like drowning. "Rest," Weiler said. "You earned it." They landed at Fob Serpent at 1,800 hours, just as the sun was setting and painting the desert in shades of red and gold. Medics rushed the wounded to the field hospital, a collection of tents and inflatable structures that smelled of antiseptic and blood. Lawson would need surgery to repair his shoulder. Chen's leg wound was clean but required careful monitoring. Reeves had a concussion. Sullivan would keep his legs, but physical therapy would take months. But they were all alive, all of them, against odds that should have killed them 3 times over. Elena sat on the tarmac outside the operations tent, still covered in dust and dried blood, some hers, most someone else's. Her rifle lay across her knees. She was staring at nothing, her gray eyes distant. Command wanted a debrief, wanted her report, wanted to reinstate her as a sniper instructor, maybe even fast-track her for a Medal of Honor recommendation for saving 12 lives and eliminating a high-value target. She refused everything. "I'm not going back," she told Colonel Morrison, the base commander. He was a career officer, 56 years old, with the kind of face that had seen too many flag-draped coffins. "I did what I had to do. That's all." Morrison sat across from her in his office, studying her with eyes that had evaluated 1,000 soldiers. "Specialist Hart, you're one of the best marksmen I've ever seen. The military needs people like you, badly. The military has people like me. Train more. You saved 12 Rangers today. You eliminated a target that's been killing our people for months. You're a hero." "I'm not a hero." Elena's voice was flat, dead. "I'm someone who got lucky, and I'm not interested in testing that luck again." "So you'll go back to being a radio operator?" "Yes." "And if your team needs you again? If they're in danger?" Elena looked at him, really looked at him. "Then, I'll do what I have to do, but I won't carry a rifle unless there's no other choice. I won't take a sniper designation. I won't teach at Benning or anywhere else. Because every time I look through a scope, sir, I see my brother dying. I see the 8th man I didn't see. I see the failure that killed 7 people, and I can't live like that every day." Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Understood. You're dismissed, Specialist. Get some rest." Elena stood to leave. "Hart?" She turned. "You saved 12 lives today. The shadow of Korvac had killed or wounded over 60 American soldiers. You ended that. I hope you know that matters." She didn't respond, just walked away, her boots echoing on the concrete floor. Outside the operations tent, Bravo 1-2 was waiting. All of them. Lawson with his arm in a sling and his shoulder bandaged. Reeves with stitches across his face and ear. Chen on crutches, his leg wrapped. Sullivan in a wheelchair, his legs in casts. The rest of the team standing around them. And Weiler at the front. Elena stopped. "What is this?" Weiler stepped forward. "We talked, all of us, and we decided something." "Decided what?" "You keep saying you don't want to be a sniper, that you don't want to be responsible for lives, but Hart, you already are. You're responsible for ours, and we're okay with that." I told Command. "We're not asking you to go back to being an instructor," Weiler interrupted gently. "We're not asking you to pick up a rifle unless you want to. We're asking you to stay with us, with Bravo 1-2, as whatever you want to be. Radio operator, tactical advisor, or just our lucky charm. We don't care. We just want you with us." Elena looked at them, confused. "Why?" Chen spoke up, leaning on his crutches. "Because you bled with us, fought with us. You carried Sullivan out when you could have saved yourself. That's not about being a good shot. That's about being a good person. We trust you," Reeves added, touching his bandaged face. "Not because you're the best sniper, because you give a damn about keeping us alive. And in this line of work, that's rarer than any skill." Lawson grinned despite his injuries. "Plus, you're way cooler than a regular radio operator. I mean, that thing you did with the sniper ring? That was some action movie stuff." A ripple of laughter ran through the team, Genuine, warm. Elena felt something crack inside her chest. Something that had been frozen solid for 3 years, encased in ice and guilt and grief. I don't know if I can. You don't have to know, Weiler said. You just have to try. One mission at a time, one day at a time. We're not asking for promises. Just stay. Sullivan wheeled forward, his face still pale but his eyes bright. They're calling you something, you know. Words spreading across the base, hitting the other units. Calling me what? The ghost sniper of Bravo 1-2. Elena blinked. That's ridiculous. Maybe, Sullivan said. But it's also true. You appeared out of nowhere when we needed you most, saved our asses like a guardian angel with a rifle, then disappeared back into the background like you were never there. If that's not a ghost, I don't know what is. The team nodded in agreement. Elena looked at each of them. These men who'd judged her when she arrived, dismissed her as just a radio operator, and now stood before her offering something she thought she'd lost forever. Family, purpose, redemption. She took a breath. If I stay, I'm still handling comms. That's non-negotiable. I'm not taking a sniper MOS again. Deal, Weiler said immediately. And I'm not taking the sniper designation back. I won't be listed as a marksman on any roster. Fine. And if any of you call me Ghost Sniper to my face, I'm requesting transfer to a different unit. Laughter. Genuine, warm. The kind that came from people who'd survived death together. Understood, Weiler said, extending his hand. Do we have an agreement? Elena looked at his hand, looked at the faces of the men around her, men who'd accepted her, trusted her, needed her. She shook his hand. All right, I'm in. The Rangers broke into smiles and cheers, carefully controlled to avoid disturbing the wounded but no less genuine. That night, as the sun set over the mountains and painted the sky in colors of fire, Elena stood alone on the perimeter wall of FOB Serpent. She looked toward Korvac Ridge, barely visible now as a dark shadow against the darkening sky. She thought of her brother, of the mission that had gone wrong, of the 7 targets she'd missed and the 7 she hadn't. I did it, Tom, she whispered to the wind, to the ghost of a man who'd believed in her even when she stopped believing in herself. I finished what you started. I saved them, all of them. A hand touched her shoulder. She turned. Weiler stood beside her, his face soft in the fading light. You okay? No, she said honestly. But I will be. Eventually. He nodded. That's all any of us can do. Just keep moving forward. They stood together in silence, watching the light fade and the stars begin to appear, thousands of them, brilliant in the clear desert sky. Somewhere in the valley below, radio chatter crackled, mission reports, casualty updates, supply requests, weather forecasts, all the mundane details that kept an army functioning. Elena's world. Her purpose. But now, it was something more. It was a second chance. A chance to be more than her worst failure. A chance to prove that redemption was possible. A chance to save lives instead of mourning the ones she couldn't. 3 weeks later, Bravo 1-2 deployed again. Different mission, different mountain, same team. Elena Hart moved with them, radio pack secure on her back, rifle slung across her chest, beside her carbine. She monitored frequencies, called in updates, coordinated with air support. She was still the communications specialist. Still the quiet one. Still the woman who preferred to stay behind her radio rather than behind her scope. But when Corporal Reeves got pinned by enemy fire at 900 meters, and the team couldn't reach him, and air support was 10 minutes out, Elena opened her small duffel bag one more time, pulled out the LRT-7 optic, attached it to her rifle with movements that were automatic, practiced, inevitable. I got him, she said quietly into her mic. And she did. One shot, clean, precise. The enemy sniper fell from his position. Reeves waved from cover, giving her a thumbs up. Safe. Elena lowered the weapon, exhaled slowly, felt the weight of what she'd done and knew she could carry it now. Not easily, not without cost, but she could carry it. She keyed her radio. Serpent Base, this is Bravo 1-2. Situation resolved. Continuing mission. Chen looked at her over his shoulder, smiled, mouthed 2 words, Ghost Sniper. She glared at him, but she didn't correct him, because maybe, just maybe, She was finally ready to be who she really was. Not the woman who failed once. Not the soldier who ran from her past, but the sniper who protected her family. The guardian angel with a rifle and a radio. The ghost of Bravo 1, 2. And that she could live with. That she could be proud of. That was enough.